from the studios of Farm Journal Broadcast.
The Secretary of Ag tours flooded fields, plus planning progress updates in agribusiness, breaking down the Kansas wheat tour.
I think the wheat tour was inconclusive.
Dairy producers watch new immigration legislation in Washington and raise the curtain on a fresh approach to farm theater.
Agday, brought to you by the dependable, longest-lasting Chevy Silverado.
Good morning, I'm Clinton Griffiths. Flooding concerns continue along some of the nation's biggest rivers and its tributaries. USDA Secretary Sonny Perdue is pledging assistance. Ag Secretary Perdue taking a tour of flooding conditions in Arkansas over the weekend. The Secretary, along with Governor Asa Hutchinson, taking in a bird's eye view. Now, as we've been reporting, some fields are covered in 6 to 8 feet of water. The University of Arkansas is estimating the flooding is impacting 937,000 acres of the state's cropland, with losses tallying up to $64.5 million. Now, Perdue says the Department of Ag is ready to help.
We'll do everything in our power, Governor, to make sure that your farmers can continue on. Certainly, crop insurance is a big part of that, and we want them to take advantage of all those kinds of resources from the USDA.
Perdue also saying he wants farmers to continue to grow crops, and he takes it very seriously that his responsibility is to sell those crops all over the world as a safe, abundant food supply. Now, it was heavy rains about a week ago that flooded fields throughout the Midwest. Planted crops were underwater and farmers were on hold waiting for things to dry out. USDA's crop progress this week, it's the first chance we have to get a feel for the national impact on planting progress. USDA says corn planting is now 47% complete. That's 5 points behind the 5-year average. In the 3 I states, Illinois and Indiana both remain ahead of the 5-year average, even though there was less than 1 day suitable for field work last week. Iowa corn planting is 3 points behind schedule. Minnesota, 20 points behind the 5-year average. Now, nationally, 15% of the crop has emerged. Meanwhile, like corn, soybeans also falling behind the 5-year average last week. Soybean planting is now 14% done. It's normally 17% complete by now. Down south, planters are by and large running ahead of schedule. The further you go north, the slower the progress. Following blizzard-like conditions in the southern plains, the winter wheat crop now rated 53% good to excellent. That's down just 1% from a week ago. Half of the crop is now headed 4 points ahead of the 5-year average. This is what scouts saw in western Kansas during last week's winter wheat tour. That tour put wheat yields for fields expected to be harvested down 40% from 2016, with a statewide average of 46 bushels to the acre, roughly 282 million bushels in all. However, agronomists and scouts say there could be more acres abandoned depending on how fields come out of the recent snowfall.
So this year was a very challenging year. We reached out the 282 here, and I think that's a fair number for us to be at right now. But again, depending on what the situation is going to be in western Kansas, after all that snow, it can be 235 or it can be 310, right? If we look at the long-term average, we are at 300, 310. I think we're safe assuming that we're slightly below that. So I think that was a safe assumption. Now, depending on the fate of the crop in western Kansas, it can be, we still have a pretty big range where we can be at this year.
We'll have more on the tour and wheat prices coming up in analysis. While the crop condition is a worry at home, some U.S. wheat growers are concerned about the trade picture overseas. According to Politico, CEO of the National Association of Wheat Growers, Chandler Gould, says the Trump administration must have a sense of urgency on the trade front, or other big wheat players like Russia, Ukraine, and Argentina could fill the markets U.S. producers need.
If you want cheap, dirty grain, you can go to Russia. If you want good quality grain, you come to the United States. And so as long as we can maintain that status, we'll be doing good. But again, it comes back to engagement in this farm bill by our producers. And it comes back to the Trump administration. If they're not going to let us have TPP, when are they going to announce the first bilateral? I'm asking them now, who's it going to be with? And we're still looking at a 4 to 6 year time frame. We've got to start working on those today.
Speaking of markets and trade, agriculture getting the attention of lawmakers during the Senate Agriculture Committee's Farm Bill field hearing in Michigan over the weekend.
But the reality is we're going to have to do more with less. That's just the way it is.
Senate Ag Chairman Pat Roberts and Ranking Democrat Debbie Stabenow listening to testimony from producers and leading ag officials in the state. Now, some of the key points at the hearing: include the possibility of increasing funds for the 2018 Farm Bill, how well crop insurance safety nets are working, international development, and finding a reliable ag workforce.
Labor continues to be our #1 issue on our farm, and I must say, there is no insurance for no labor. A solution to this problem must come sooner than later. I've personally witnessed crops wasting away on trees because the producer wasn't able to secure a domestic workforce.
Stabenow said in her remarks, ag is the state's second largest industry, supporting 1 out of every 4 jobs. Some pockets of the western Corn Belt got a chance to dry out over the weekend. Mike Hoffman has an update.
Good morning, Clinton. Our first photo comes from southeast South Dakota. This producer says while the fields are still a little wet, several did start to plant on Monday. The weather is quite a change from over a week ago when snow blanketed this area. But some areas could still use a dry down. Here's a photo taken Sunday in Peru, Illinois. As you can see, some flat fields are still covered in water. And taking a look at the weather map, you can see some systems moving across the country. None of these are huge or very wet systems, but there's just a lot of nuisance rain out there. We'll talk more about that with your forecast. But first, here are some hometown temps.
Here's the secret to selling old equipment. Pete's Pick of the Week lets you easily view current market prices. Just text Pete6 to 31313 to get started.
We'll continue our wheat tour conversation after the break, including how markets may be looking at the recent numbers, and later take a trip to the theater. These Tennessee farmers are hoping it could be good for your health.
I'm Betsy Gibbon. Mother Nature finally gave farmers in eastern Iowa a good window to plant. We'll have that story tomorrow on our I-80 planting tour in eastern Iowa on Agday.
Visit farmjournalpro.com. Trusted analysis, professional insight. farmjournalpro.com.
Grains were in the red early Monday. Let's see how markets closed from the floor of the CME.
Generally stronger day in both the cattle and the hogs. Cattle responding finally to the fact that there were some pretty fancy prices paid for cattle last week. $145 to $148 was paid in some parts of the Great Plains, and that's a full up to $10 more than was paid the previous week. That's created some selling interest on Friday because of some long liquidation on the part of the speculators, but the futures are starting to rebound today and closed on a firm note here for a Monday. Hog market also trading higher, finding good support from the cash market that has been firm, if not exactly running away like the cattle market, but definitely trading on a firm note. And even though there's plenty of hogs out there, there seems to be the demand to take up the slack, and that's kept prices firm. Thanks very much. This is Jack Scoville. I'm Vice President of Price Futures Group here on the CME Group floor with some comments for the markets.
As I mentioned, the Kansas Wheat Tour wrapped up late last week, but there are still a lot of unknowns in the final tally. Tyne Morgan joins us from the Agribusiness Desk with more. Tyne?
Here now with Joe Vaklovic of Standard Grain. Joe, we saw the Kansas Wheat Tour take place last week. It happened on the heels of a massive snowstorm. So really, when you think about the Wheat Tour overall, how accurate is it going to be when we have this damage that you really couldn't account for?
I think the Wheat Tour was inconclusive. I think the people who participated in the Wheat Tour would probably be the first ones to tell you that. There was just such a big portion of the western part of the state, which was the most heavily damaged part of the state when it comes to snow and freezing temperature and just really adverse conditions. They just didn't get the samples that they needed. So I think it's going to be a while until the real level of damage is assessed and until we have a better feel for what's possible from a production standpoint.
But when that final number came out of Kansas, I mean, we saw wheat prices go into the dumps, and it took a massive fall. Was it just because of those findings and that it showed that maybe the wheat crop wasn't as bad as what some had expected, or were there other forces that played into that huge downturn in price?
I think that has something to do with it. I think it also has something to do with the grander scheme money flow type factors. Funds have been short this wheat market forever. They've been able to roll into a carry for months and months and months. It's been like an annuity that just pays for them every year. So like we talked about on the earlier segment, it's going to be something that it's going to be difficult to shake the shorts out of this wheat market, I think.
Right. I mean, how much damage do we need to see to really impact this market when we are sitting on a ton of old crop wheat? Not just from last year, the year before too.
Well, that's the problem. The problem is that one, we've got way too much wheat in this country. That two, we don't make the world market for wheat anymore like we used to. There are other bigger players that are doing more export business than us, and it's just the demand base just isn't there. Even if we're competitive, it just seems like the Black Sea region continues to just outdo us in terms of exports and things of that nature. So it's just difficult for us to find any footing here.
All right, thanks so much, Joe. Stay with us. We'll have a much more Ag Day when we come back.
For more information about Standard Grain and its services, call Joe at 312-462-4438.
Get the roots your crops need by getting Radiate first. Visit lovelandproducts.com/radiate. See your CPS dealer today.
Welcome back to Ag Day. Meteorologist Mike Hoffman. Mike, as we were talking before we started here, it's kind of a weird looking map for this time of year, isn't it?
Yeah, if you pay close attention, some things are moving west or northwest on this map. That's just how strange it is with the cutoff lows that we're seeing at the jet stream level. We'll take a look at that jet stream coming up. But right now, let's put the maps into motion. You'll notice this is the one low pressure system that's moving quickly. It's diving down the backside of a cutoff low, so it's going to move quickly through Illinois and Indiana as we head through today. So the rain will be spreading into the central Appalachians by later in the day today. Just kind of a strip of 1/2 to 1 inch rainfall amounts, with areas northeast and southwest of it not getting much at all. This system's going to kind of linger in the desert southwest. Some of the energy starts to come into the western plains as we head into the day, well, let's say tomorrow night and on into Wednesday. But all in all, we're not talking a ton of rain quite yet with it, but with a slow mover like this, we'll have to watch that as that comes eastward. How much Gulf moisture does that pick up? Heading toward tomorrow morning, then you can see some showers and thunderstorms starting to break out ahead of it. Western, northwestern Texas on into parts of the Missouri Valley. And as we head through the day tomorrow, this system is way offshore into the Atlantic. The system sitting over the Atlantic is actually moving northwestward into Maine with some showers, and this system very slowly moving into the northwestern Great Lakes with a few showers as well. So we do start to moisten this system up here. It does look like when you look at the jet stream that it'll eventually kind of fold eastward into the eastern cutoff low. So again, a very strange system, or a very strange situation, like Clinton pointed out. There's the jet stream estimate past 24 hours. Look at that narrow strip of 1/2 to 1 inch rainfall amounts heading toward the southeast over the next 36 hours. Then that moves into the central Appalachians just in a small area. Now this system does start to moisten up as we head through the day tomorrow, or let's say over the next 36 hours, and we are looking at 1 to 2 inch amounts in some areas with that. All depends on where the heavier thunderstorms hit. Still showing the snowfall map. There's not a whole lot going on, but you will notice over the next 36 hours we'll add a little bit to the highest elevations, Colorado and northern New Mexico. Taking a look at highs today, into the 80s all the way up into southern Iowa, central Illinois, but it's only in the 40s around the Great Lakes. That's been the case most of the weekend and early part of this week already. Lows tonight, 60s for much of the southern portions of the Corn Belt, but you can see off to the northeast, still 30s and 40s across the Great Lakes. Highs tomorrow, more of the same, although it does try to warm up a little bit into the northern plains as well, with some 60s showing back up. Jet stream as we start the week. There's a cutoff over the northeast. Start the cutoff over the northwestern portions of Mexico, southwestern U.S. You can see how that eventually kind of folds eastward and comes into the big eastern trough by the time we head toward this weekend. But basically, we're still talking a ridge through most of the middle of the country, which is warm, and we're still talking cutoffs west and east. That's a look across the country. Now let's take a look at some local forecasts. First of all, for Spokane, Washington, partly sunny and quite comfortable today, high of 72 degrees. Lufkin, Texas, good deal of sunshine and warm with a high of 85. And Kalamazoo, Michigan, cool with clouds and some sunshine, high around 57 degrees.
When we come back, we'll look at the dairy market, including movements in Washington policy that could impact farmers. Plus,
I'm Charles Denny. Some Tennessee producers acting out. You'll have a front row seat to farm theater and hear the message from their performance. That story coming up on Agday.
Join the campaign to help victims of the wildfires, just like the Howard G. Buffett Foundation. The organization has pledged to match dollar to dollar up to $1 million in relief funds. To learn more, go to wildfirerelieffund.org.
A bill introduced last week in the U.S. Senate would give farm workers a path to legal status and citizenship. The legislation allowing undocumented farm workers who have worked in agriculture for at least 100 days in each of the previous 2 years were able to earn a blue card, which would allow them to work legally. They would eventually be eligible for a green card or permanent residency, which opens the door to earning citizenship. Last week, we told you about Ag Secretary Sonny Perdue's decision to adjust school meal standards, including bringing back flavored 1% milk. Well, now 7 of the largest school districts in the U.S. are banding together, announcing they will not relax their school meal standards. The districts organizing as the Urban School Food Alliance. With a combined enrollment of 3.1 million students, that spend nearly $600 million a year on food and supplies. They include New York City, Los Angeles, Chicago, Dallas, Miami-Dade County, Florida, Orange County, Florida, and Broward County in Fort Lauderdale, Florida. Now, the group plans to continue reducing sodium levels, increase whole grain foods up to 100%, and serve only non-fat flavored milk rather than 1% milk. Also in Washington, there continues to be a push to limit the term milk to beverages that come from animals and not plants. Democratic U.S. Senator Tammy Baldwin of Wisconsin introducing the dairy-friendly legislation. Although not everyone in agriculture is on board, the American Soybean Association spokesman Patrick Delaney, he says people who decide to purchase an alternative to dairy milk know the difference. He said soybean farmers have been getting into that milk market because of demand. When we come back, we'll turn the lights on a theatrical performance from a group of farmers. Why did they take the stage? Details straight ahead.
In the country, brought to you by Kubota. Check out Kubota's RTV X 1140, a rugged utility vehicle with seating for 4. Stop by your local dealer today or visit Kubota.com.
It's not a combination you hear often, farming and theater, but some Tennessee producers are climbing on stage as actors to tell others about their profession, both the good and the bad. UT Extension teamed with the University of Kentucky to host a farm theater tour in several towns. Charles Denny raises the curtain on one performance.
Oh, I better give Jane a call. She has me on the schedule. I told her I'd be working up on the knob this morning.
Ray County farmer Harold Fisher is playing a version of himself. He's one of the actors in this farm theater program. Other producers joined him on stage and in the audience for 3 skits. There were plenty of funny lines, but also more serious talk about issues farmers face: stress, occupational hazards, and health and aging.
But some of the script is, the scary part, it fits me to a T. I have trouble hearing, and a lot of other folks have trouble hearing, but it's exciting, it's interesting to do.
I kept pushing buttons, and that thing just kept beeping at me.
No need to memorize lines, the actors read from a script. But the importance here is not on performance, but message. UT Extension helped coordinate this near sellout event in Evansville.
Skits that we're going to be doing are actually based upon actual accounts that producers have had in farm safety accidents. And so hopefully they'll learn something tonight and apply that on their own farm.
The farm theater was started by the University of Kentucky's College of Nursing. Using grant money, administrators did research with farmers in Kentucky and Tennessee, and then later wrote the script based on these stories and interviews.
What would make you stop and think about things on the farm? And they said, well, if we listen to each other, because they learn from each other's stories about what almost happened to Joe down the road or what did happen to Harry, up the road. So we thought, okay, stories are good.
A gerontologist by trade and a childhood in agriculture, UK's Dr. Deborah Reed designed the farm theater. She leads a discussion after each skit with advice about safety and mental and physical health.
And as you begin to age, farmers are just people like everybody else, so they have issues with arthritis, they have issues with hearing loss, they have issues with cataracts, fatigue, trying to multitask.
I know Jake's daddy, how'd he take it?
He
wasn't too happy.
In theater, when you wish someone good luck on stage, you say, break a leg. Of course, you don't want that in farming, literally speaking. But when an actor speaks, especially one who's really lived the plot, it's a performance any audience can appreciate.
And cut.
This is Charles Denny reporting.
All right, thanks, Charles. And that's all the time we have this morning. Sure glad you tuned in. Start your day with us. For Mike Hoffman, Betsy Tippin, and all of us here at Agday, I'm Clinton Griffiths. Have a great day.
Agday is powered by Ram Trucks, America's longest-lasting pickups.